go.
Hello and welcome to another edition of The Nation. I'm Jared Rudnam. As Malaysia comes of age, we come to terms with the role of media and communications in creating a PRIHATIN society. Now, while we strive for stronger unity, in conjunction with our 63rd Merdeka, we look at communications and its importance as Malaysia evolves into a more mature society. Joining me is the illustrious Professor Bani, who's been in communications for a very long time, and we're going to get some insights from him. Prof, thank you very much for taking time off to be with us today. I'm a bit nervous talking to you with all that experience you bring along with you, and there's just so much to talk about, but we're at a juncture where everyone's trying to process a lot of things right now. And what's this time been like for you, going through the MCO, learning about COVID, and as you evolve as a person and as you evolve with your team at bzBee?
Actually, what's been happening in since earlier this year, MCO and COVID-19, has been a challenge, not just for us, for the industry as a whole and for many other industries. The thing about us is actually experiencing new things, getting adjusted, making changes to get used to and to in fact overcome the challenges. So it's and this can only be achieved when we come together.
Right.
So the team, my team, I'm very fortunate, bzBee is very fortunate to have a team of people who stick by each other through thick and thin.
Right.
And we create opportunities ourselves. We create SOPs ourselves to cope with the changes and the challenges that come along.
Right. But you know, changes for you is not a new norm, or not something normal. You've been evolving and changing all the time. You came back after reading law in the UK. You came back to Malaysia and you took on the corporate world in broadcasting and a couple of other areas. You were also with the diplomatic corps. So all these changes would have taught you something in communications. And what was that one lesson you learned in communications whilst being in all these, all the various industries?
Yeah, I've got to say this. Changing from the legal profession, of course, I graduated in law. I studied. I went on to do my professionals in UK. I also worked as a solicitor in London.
By the way, bzBee turns 10 this year, isn't it?
Yeah, bzBee turns 10.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you.
Yeah, going back to what you're saying. Yeah.
So the key aspect of similarities, I would say, between legal profession and communications, in terms of technical, of course, you can't compare, but in terms of ability, skill sets are very much similar, which include ability to analyze, doing research, confidence in communication, or communicating with people. So these are the similar skill sets. But how I got into communications is when I joined the corporate world. You know, you go up the corporate ladder, you have to become a generalist, no longer a specialist. So I was communications, finance, human resource were all shoved under me, and I had to learn myself.
So you had to be a jack and master of all trades.
Yes, yes. I would love to believe that.
Yeah.
Huh?
But a lot of people in the industry, you know, you raise eyebrows when people talk about you. So, you know, that's very indicative of you contributing towards the industry. Now, I guess when we speak about the industry, we talk about the scene here in Malaysia. I know it's changed a lot. A lot has happened in Malaysia and in the communication scene. Can you just give us an overview of what the scene is like currently?
Let's go back about 30 years back in terms of the scene of communications.
We need 2 hours now.
So I'm not going to talk about every year, but in terms of the industry, the players of the industry are basically either internal communicators or consultants. For consultants like me, 30 years ago, this whole industry was dominated by MNCs. And it was largely, in terms of gender, largely dominated by women and non-Malays. Now, in the last 10 years, is more diverse or still dominated by women. And a lot of homegrown companies have now come forward and have been recognized, like bzBee, for example. And organizations are more willing to rely on local companies because communications is actually an area where you need to know local information, you need to know the sentiments locally, you need to be able to relate to the local target audience. And organizations are more willing to recognize this, and in fact find that local homegrown companies are very useful to help them enhance their brand.
But the MCO has brought about a lot of challenges. You know, maybe you want to walk us through some of these challenges.
For this industry, basically they're twofold. One, challenges for the companies itself. For example, we needed to change how we work. We had to work from home, but work still has to go on. And platforms like Zoom, video conferencing are very useful, and to communicate, to have meetings with clients, and also to do your job. The other challenge is basically getting the media to support, because the media themselves face challenges during this time.
I would like to think that we are of some sort of help.
Yes, most definitely, because one important aspect of PR and communication is media relations. If you develop strong media relations, of course the media will support you. I'm very thankful for, in fact, most of the media have been very, very supportive.
Right.
But they can only be supportive during MCO or COVID-19 challenge. To whatever extent that they can. They too have various restrictions.
Right.
You guys also have various restrictions.
Here's a quote from you. You say, when it gets tough, PR and advertising industry is the first to be hit. How do you explain this?
Definitely. In the last, 3-4 decades, in fact, when budgets are slashed for organizations, the first services, the first few services that are pushed aside are PR, communications, and publicity. The budgets for this are slashed. Yet at the same time, when companies or organizations are faced with challenges, for example, issues arise, they require PR services, they require communications to help change perception, to help strengthen their brand of products or services. But I would hope one day organizations would they do realize it, but I won't comment on why they do that. But I guess the budgets for this sort of services are the easiest to slash.
Communications and how it was used as a tool of propaganda. Yes. Isn't it still being used as a tool of propaganda?
Most definitely by certain quarters. But let's look at the positive side. How important communication is to build. When people use communications as a certain propaganda, you take an approach of destruction. But communications is meant to be used to build brands, to strengthen visibility, credibility, and create aspiration of brands, which includes products, which includes personalities, organizations, government, and even the nation. Now, looking at the propaganda, I think the earliest form of propaganda, using communications as propaganda, was during the times of colonialization, colonials.
Yeah.
So the British, for example, they set up Department of Information, and then it went on to Department of Information and Publicity in 1941, if I'm not mistaken.
Publicity was propaganda.
To actually push forward the agenda of colonials, to perhaps, in my opinion, to make people, certain groups feel small, to divide and conquer, perhaps.
Right.
During the Japanese times also, the concept of Asia for Asians, they use communication to garner support. But communication is not just through media, using force one-on-one, using violence one-on-one to garner support or to force people to support you. That's also a form of communications. So that's what I meant by propaganda to an extent.
Right. So it can be, like anything else, it can be used for good, it can be used for bad also. But there are many challenges and opportunities in communication. And I guess now that we're turning 63, we're still a very young country. There's a lot for us to learn, and there's a lot we are learning, trial by fire. As we go, we are learning. Now, what is the biggest lesson we've learned this year? No, 2020 has taught us many lessons, but for you personally, what is one of the biggest lessons we've learned from 2020?
Two aspects. So for the business, actually, you need to be able to change. You need to be able to create opportunities for yourself through various diversification in terms of content, in terms of your business. But in terms of communication, what's happening in the realities of the industry, what I have learned mainly is people taking advantage of scenarios, not just in Malaysia, worldwide. Taking advantage of certain scenarios, using communication to propagate messages which is beneficial to themselves.
Which brings me to a very important question. Are the current batch of PR people, the younger generation, learning the necessary, are equipped with the necessary skills, say in writing and in sending out messages, in ensuring that these things are brought down or tempered a little bit?
I would love to be optimistic. Basically, yes, I believe the practitioners, the younger practitioners, they have advantage in the sense that they have exposure to various platforms of communications. They have examples or teachers to teach them to how to utilize communications effectively.
But social media has been a blessing and a bane.
Correct.
Yeah.
But the social media, the advent of social media is actually, as you mentioned, blessing and can also be a bane, in the sense that blessing in the sense that you get to reach a wider audience at a faster time, for example, and the negative aspect of it is not being able to use social media as a positive tool, not using social media as a positive tool. What I meant by that is basically using social media to propagate negative issues, falsehood, using social media, not fact-checking, misinformation and things like that. And to the extent that social media has also been used to commit crimes, to defame people. That is why I believe the ministry, in fact, has taken steps, which is very good. I believe more than.
You think MCMC is doing a good job?
I'm still not going to answer that.
Yeah.
I believe MCMC are trying their best to do a good job. I believe there are positivities that have been that have come to surface. I believe MCMC needs to. When you talk about MCMC, I also mean the ministry.
The ministry, yes.
Yeah.
So we're talking about the communications ministry.
Yeah, there's a lot more that can be done. I believe the current KSU, for example, she exudes positivities, I believe.
Right.
And that aspect of messaging, communicating messaging and whatnot needs to be improved. There's a lot that can be done, but I believe that the ministry have put in a lot of effort compared to the past.
Right, so a lot is being done. In your opinion, a lot is being done by the ministry to enable messaging to get across in a better manner.
A lot, but not enough. A lot can also be done further.
Right. Now, I guess all of us have our wish list for our country. You know, we want to see this country become bigger and better, one of the strongest in the regions, and all of us have a vision for the country. What is, you know, as a comms person, what is your vision for Malaysia based on this year's Merdeka theme, Malaysia PRIHATIN?
Of course, as a comms person, I would love to see more effective communication of messages, but communicating of messaging is not enough. You must get to the hearts of the people. So it's actually a combination of communication,
right? But
as well as
it's people from different levels of society. You're talking about, you have your bangsa bubble, you have your working class, you have. So how do you make this message, this one message, stream across to all different the various societies in Malaysia?
It's the method of communication, the approach. You can't apply one approach of communication to various levels of societies. No matter what. Once upon a time we were talking about we are not we shouldn't be divided by ethnic groups. We are one Malaysia. We are Malaysians first. Come on, every ethnic group has different sentiments. So no matter, even if we want to be seen, definitely we want to be seen as Malaysian, but different ethnic groups' preferences, the way we reach out to them are different. So in terms of communication, we do need to still see ethnic groups as ethnic groups, as well as age groups, gender. That is why we need to know the demography of our target audience. Now, when we know that, we would know the approach to communicate the message. The message may be the same, but how we approach communication to communicate the message may differ for different groups.
How do we then now start this conversation about unity again without getting into each other's faces?
Actually, I believe it's very much a belief system. Communications plays an important part in developing, in molding, in affecting, influencing people's belief system. Through the belief system, you can bring people together as a unified force. The correct messaging, the correct communicating would be able to ensure people come together as in unity, unencumbered, uninterrupted. They stand together as one towards a common goal and a common cause. But what are the factors? There are many factors that will bring about unity. One, for example, is basically the society that you are in, the environment that is set for you. You must have a what do you call that? A positive environment. A positive environment must be created. A positive feeling about your family or your community. You must have a strong leader to be able to bring people together and not just point fingers and point out people's blame people. You must have members, strong members of community, people who want to or are educated to want to achieve change and want to be united. And more importantly, you must have constant, correct and effective communication.
But here comes the more important question, and we're playing for time at this point, and you have a great conclusion for us though. With all this happening and with all of us trying to do this, does Malaysia really want to change? Do we really want to change, or do we want the status quo? Do we want to continue blaming each other for what's happening just so we have a crutch to hold on?
Well, it's unfortunate there are
and I'm asking you this in your capacity as a communications person.
As I said, it's very unfortunate that there are people who do that, but I'm very optimistic. I believe in people's positivities. I believe that people do want to change, and there are a lot of people out there who believe that you can't change everything at once, but you must take small steps, or you must take steps towards change. So with regards to bringing these people together, bringing society together as a united force, as I said, communications is very important. They used to say that cash is king. I believe communications is king. Communications make or break people, make or break brands. And brands include, as I think I mentioned earlier, products, includes personalities, includes organizations, includes governments, and even the nation. So failure in communications will have an impact on that.
Right. So one thing we know, which is a constant at this point, or is consistent at this point, is our communication during the pandemic. We have communicated messages well. We work with the Ministry of Health well. Everyone listens, and we've come this far.
Bravo. Yeah.
Now, when you talk about branding, and you talked about communication is important to a brand, our brand as a country, how do we communicate that out to the world now that everyone is struggling to pull businesses into their countries? So what can we do to strengthen our brand as a country? What message can we put out there as we celebrate our 63rd Merdeka?
That's a tough one, actually.
It is a tough one.
It's huge. You see, one of the things that I'll give you one example. I hope we have time. Yeah. You know the issue about Al Jazeera, controversial and whatnot. It takes a Caucasian, I would have to say, a Western guy who came up with a simple video to say positive things about what Malaysia has done in terms of communications. I've got to say again, the Ministry of Health did a wonderful job, but
we have 2 minutes.
The positive side of this was brought to light to the international arena, onto the international arena by a Caucasian guy, by a non-Malaysian. And subsequently, Al Jazeera came into the picture and painted all these negative things. I wish we, as a nation, or we, what I mean by a nation, practitioners like me, the media, individuals, can come together, because we've got the internet, we've got social media. Our messaging can reach the international arena.
Right.
So why can't we do that? Why can't we communicate these positive messages? Why can't we tell the world what we have achieved? This is very sad indeed.
Right. Prof, we've got about a minute left, and I don't want to waste time doing a closing, but I want your message to Malaysia with regards to moving forward after Merdeka. We've got Malaysia Day to celebrate too.
Yes.
Yeah. So what is your message as an industry player? You've been in the industry for what, 20 over years. What do you have to say to the rest of Malaysia with regards to us moving forward?
I believe,
and I think it's always about moving forward.
It's always about communication. I believe we have to be more responsible. When we talk about responsibility, of course, people are saying the public have got to be more responsible in terms of sharing information, what they share, fact-checking and whatnot. But it's not just the public, it's us, the media, it's practitioners like me, it's organizations. We have to ensure that the correct messaging is communicated, one, and in terms of organizations, they must ensure that for example, in terms of COVID-19 and whatnot, that's an issue. Messages are communicated. People know what's going on. People must be educated with regards to what needs to be done, what should be done, the SOPs and whatnots. So these are responsible communications. So we cannot just put the responsibility of effectively and correctly communicating messages to the public. It's everyone, as I mentioned, the industry players, consultants like me, the media play an important role.
Okay, we've got that message loud and clear. But before we let you go, Selamat Menyambut Hari Merdeka. Thank you very much
Thank you for having me.
And we hope to have you back here at some point to join us and to also have a forum with us on communications. I guess if we've learned something from today's conversation, it is about communications. It can start as easy as us just Googling what communications is before we embark on the journey of strengthening communications. On that note, I'm Jared Ratnam with Prof. Bani signing out. You have a great day ahead, and thank you very much for staying with us right here on Bernama TV.
Thanks.